All right, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the February 4th, 2020 meeting of the Orange Town Plan and Zoning Commission. I'm Commissioner Ozzie Parenti. Let me start this evening by pointing out that we're joined tonight by our newest commission member, Tom Tarenti, sitting here to my right. Tom was appointed by our first selectman and sworn in to fill the unexpired term of former commission member Ralph Ascantino. Tom's a lifelong Orange resident and a very dear friend of mine who I've known since we started 7th grade together, just over 50 years ago. It's hard to believe. Tom doesn't look a day older. Yeah, Tom's a structural engineer by training with offices here in town, and very excited to have him join us. I'm sure that he's going to be a great addition to the commission. So, welcome, Tom.
Thanks for the warm welcome, Oz.
All right. So let's introduce everybody else at the table, if we could.
Okay, Tammy Chantalis, Administrative Assistant.
Tom Tarenti, Commissioner.
Paul Kaplan.
Jack Demerjen, Assistant Zoning.
Kevin Cornell.
Judy Smith.
Paul Denise, Zoning Administrator and Enforcement Officer.
All right, and as I mentioned, I'm Commissioner Ozzie Parenti. We don't have a very lengthy agenda this evening, but let's get started right away with our minutes from the January 21, 2020 meeting. Does everybody have those, and have they had a chance to take a look? Tom, you weren't here for that meeting, so. I have a couple of comments on page 3, if anybody, if I could begin there. The very first sentence on the page, Commissioner Smith stated that this is a permitted use. She's referring to the application of SD Woodruff and Sons with respect to the smoothie shop in the Orange Convenience Center. If I remember correctly, I think we concluded that it's not a permitted use.
Trying to figure that out.
Right. I mean, well, it was clearly not a permitted as of right use.
Might have been a special permit.
But if any, so I think that sentence should say that it's not a permitted use or permitted as of right. I think just the way it's stated there is incorrect.
To the facts and to the statement.
Right. Then it says Chairman Parenti read a portion of the regulations into the record. He expressed his opinion that that this section of the regulations describes restaurants. That's in the second full paragraph. That may have been. The section I referred to was 383-33D. So I think we should make that reference there, section 383-33D. And then it says, he noted that food takeout is allowed with a special use permit. And then I think it should say either under 383-34B or C. Because we weren't clear on exactly which of those two sections would apply for the intended use, partly because we weren't clear on exactly what the intended use was going to be, what the operation was. So I think we ought to reference those sections, and we're leaving it to the applicant to come in with a special.
Yes.
He has, okay. And if I looked at it looked like from these minutes that we didn't expect him here tonight.
That's correct. We had to notice that.
Okay.
He'll be at the next meeting.
So he's bringing his application in under one of those two sections, under B or C? Okay, because I don't think, actually in rereading them, I didn't think C applied. I think B was his only chance of getting it done. And then it says that the second to last sentence in that paragraph, Chairman Parenti added that it is necessary to follow the correct procedure. And I would go on to say, and make application for special use as opposed to just site plan approval. Because that's all we had before us at the last meeting was a site plan approval. So those were the only few things that I had to clean that up.
There was a small amount of discussion that that parking wasn't an issue because the application, even if it was a special use permit, had more than enough parking on the site, if not in front of that, directly in front of that unit. Is that something to bother put in, or
I thought I read something here about parking, actually.
did I miss it on the second page? I could have gone right by it.
I think it is mentioned, Kevin, but Commissioner Cornell noted that this use would generate more traffic than a dentist office. I'm not sure that that's exactly what you said, or,
But there definitely was discussion about that, the fact that the parking was more than sufficient.
right. Oh, I'm sorry, it referred to traffic, now you're talking about parking, yeah.
Right.
Well, why don't we
We'll
add
add that.
why don't we add a sentence to that effect? All right, anything else? All right, someone prepared to make a motion that we approve?
I'll move that
the,
we
minutes?
approve the January 21st, 2020 minutes as amended.
All right, do we have a,
Second.
we have a second?
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Kaplan, seconded by Commissioner Cornell. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Commissioner Tarenti abstains. All right. We have the minutes from the January 31, 2020 special meeting. They weren't on the agenda. Should we wait till next time?
Add it to the agenda, it doesn't matter. We can wait.
So, well, why don't we put them on the agenda for the, has everybody had a chance to review them, or?
From our site meeting.
Yeah, no, I did review it, but it's interesting because it was so disjointed. We were all over the site.
Yeah.
So there were some discussions that ensued that were out of my earshot, so I can only comment on a portion of it, so to speak. I'm
Right.
prepared to vote on it when you're ready, but,
Are you prepared to review them tonight?
oh,
I mean,
whatever you want to do, yeah.
No, it's not on the agenda.
It's not on the agenda, so we can wait till next.
All right, let's do
Probably
that. Let's
should
put
wait.
that on the agenda for the next meeting. All right, so that takes care of the minutes, item number 1. Item number 2 is old business. Paul, you answered my question regarding the Woodruff special permit application. We'll see that next time. Anybody else wish to bring up?
Any updates on the Airbnb potential regs?
Yeah, I was
or-
gonna cover that in my report, but I'll do that now.
Okay,
I canvassed some area towns with regard to Airbnb regulations. And there were some communities that had some Airbnb regulations, but they were more in the form of licensing.
Those facilities,
So they were allowing them with licenses.
with some with licenses, some with restrictions. I did some research in terms of court cases, and I just printed out a sheet on it, but it's upstairs. But it wouldn't be hard to make a prohibition of that type of use. In fact, normally, when I look at these things in our regulations, if it doesn't permit it, it is prohibited. However, with B&Bs, I think it's Airbnbs, I think it's important that we do have regulations. And the reason why is because of some of the case law, it's still being developed. When an Airbnb has been cited illegally, and that residence is owner occupied, the courts haven't always ruled in favor of the municipalities that have taken those individuals to court. And in fact, the court in those cases recommended specific regulations to prohibit Airbnbs.
Has there been any specific prohibitions in and around the area?
No, I found no regulations that specifically prohibited them. When I talked to a couple zoning officers, they said, our regulations are also prohibitive like yours if it's not listed as permitted. However, I think we should,
another
it's not gonna take much. It's gonna
I
really
think we
be
should
2
do it.
sentences.
And we're only talking about the residential zone.
Yeah, and the key concept is this. is that it is rented on a day-to-day basis. The courts, in the review of court cases, have made a determination that 1 month is the time limit. If someone's staying more than 1 month, it's not viewed as a day-to-day rental or a transient use. Now, people may say, well, it's only a month. Well, that's what the courts are saying. So,
I think we should have Vinnie.
so it's
look-
going to be driven by that. And I can have something prepared for you for the next meeting.
Yeah, I think we should check with Vinnie to confirm the court cases and where the statutes are, where the cases are going, and then, I mean, my thought is that we would do it.
We have to prepare some kind of definition for an Airbnb.
Right.
Yeah, because
I mean,
I don't
listing-
think we have to call it an
Yeah.
Airbnb, but just a transitional rental of a day, on a
Right.
day-to-day
Right,
basis.
with, yeah, the time periods.
The time period is critical.
Yeah.
Are you reading any discussion in those cases about any differentiation between when someone's renting a room in a house that they are also occupying versus renting the whole house?
I've noticed the difference in terms of the court cases, but that is something that we do permit right now. We do permit a rooming house. But under this definition, a person would have to stay there more than a month. So, which,
Basically, you can rent rooms, but it's
you
got to be
can
on a
rent, you
month-to-month
can rent
basis.
rooms in the
it
residential
has to
district.
be owner occupied.
Has to be owner occupied, you have to share one kitchen. But I think it would also help that definition as well, because it won't be a day-to-day rental or a transient rental, it'll be at least a month in nature.
All right. So the next step is to look at some,
I'm gonna draft
Some
it, I can
language.
draft something up for you,
okay.
have Vinnie take a look at it.
Why don't we do that? Get started on that maybe next meeting. Okay, anything else under old business? All right, how about under new business? I don't know if this is old business or new business, but I think, Paul, we failed to have an election, a commission.
Of
I think
officers.
First meeting in January on an even-numbered year.
You're right,
So we should have a slate of officers for the commission,
okay.
or put it on our agenda.
I'll put it on the
Next
next
time.
agenda.
Yeah.
Have a discussion
Yeah.
about that and a vote. I don't know how I stumbled across that, but,
It's in the bylaws.
right.
You must have been reading the bylaws.
And Tom, I don't think I got you a copy of that, I'll get you a copy of the bylaws.
All right. Anything else under new business? All right, item number 4 is a report of the zoning enforcement officer.
That's about all I
You ha-
have.
What you had is what you had, right? Okay. All right. The,
I think you've got a few violations in your packet, maybe. Not quite sure.
Okay. All right, then, the 5th item on our agenda is a request for release of bond for 220 Edison Road, ET Real Estate LLC / Eastern Tech. Town of Orange is holding a $50,000 cash bond. All site work has been completed. Paul, can you bring us up to date on that?
Yeah, a CO has been issued. The project was constructed in accordance with the approval. I think there was one small change, and that there was a retaining wall between the Eastern Tech property and the Pez property. Called for a 3-foot retaining wall, and they had enough space to put in a 2-to-1 slope rather than the retaining wall. And it works out better too, easier for maintenance, and I think it's even better for Pez. But everything was completed in accordance with the approval. All department heads have signed off, and it's a $50,000 cash bond.
Okay. So who ultimately signs off? Is it
Well,
zoning
if,
or?
yes, it's a zoning bond, site
Okay.
completion bond. So you vote to release that bond, and then I'll do the
All
paperwork.
right, as you mentioned, we have all the department head.
All the department heads have signed off, a
Signed
CO
off.
has been issued.
Okay. Any questions for Paul?
It came out quite nice. It's a hidden building, however, the driveway is very long to gain access to
Uh-huh.
it, but it should fit in well up there.
All right. Any questions for Paul? All right, then, do we have a motion to release release the bond?
So moved.
All right, we have a motion.
Second?
It's been seconded by Commissioner Smith. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
I do have a question on one of the, on the cease and desist, or the notice of violation, I guess it is. What's going on with Mr. Spargo?
There was a large quantity of fill that was brought in without a special permit.
What was his position?
Well, he came into my office, or the brother did. The brother owns the adjacent property.
Right.
That accesses the filling, and they're gonna stop filling. And that's the first step. They're actually gonna remove a pile or two of soils. I also cited him for a large pile of, metal cabinets, metal debris and stuff like that. They're gonna get rid of that. I have to make an inspection later this week. That should be taken care of. For everything, with the exception of the removal of fill or a remediation of the property. There was a large quantity of fill that was deposited on the property. I'm gonna say our threshold is 400 cubic yards, and was probably in excess of 7,000 to 10,000. That might be a conservative estimate.
Just a wee bit of over the limit.
Yeah.
Um,
From what I understand, it went on for, not all of it was recent, but some of it was over the course of some years.
How long do you think you'll give him?
Well, we're gonna discuss that after he takes care of all those items that he can address immediately. There was an anti-blight order that was issued as well.
Mhm.
So, the first step is him for remove all that he can do, and then it'll probably require an application before you.
Does the was it $150 a day or something like that? I forget the,
I think if the applicant's gonna move to address it.
We'll
But
hold off on it.
there's a two-pronged thing here, too. It's not only a zoning violation, but it's a wetlands violation. So, if the wetlands wasn't there, maybe you can say, hey, listen, you filled it in accordance, but it gets a lot more complicated, because.
how do we enforce it is my question.
What's that?
How are we going to enforce it?
Well, I think I'd confer with Jack
Okay.
and Vinnie, and see what the property
Applicant
owner
is
says.
gonna- yeah.
If he's not cooperative at all, I think we issue the fine right away. If he's gonna submit an application and look at remediating what's been done,
So far, he's been cooperative?
yes.
Okay.
All right. The last item on our agenda is the site plan application for the property known as 131 Boston Post Road. The proposal is to repave parking areas after filling and grading. It also includes drainage improvements. As you may remember, I mentioned at the last meeting that I have a conflict on this matter, and so I will recuse myself. I believe Commissioner Tarenti also has a conflict.
Yes, I do.
All right, so
And I
we'll,
also need to recuse myself.
right, so we'll excuse ourselves from the table. And we'll turn it over to Vice Chairman Smith.
Vice
All right.
something.
Well,
Thank you, gentlemen.
thank you.
On January 31st, 3 commissioners, Paul, Kevin, myself, attended a site visit along with our staff. And we were focusing on the retaining wall, the construction, and I think viability. And at that time, there were materials on the back of the property that were on the adjacent property owner's land. And since then, Ken has purchased that land, so now, while the slope does still need to be changed with the back wall material, it is all on his property now. And Paul, would you like to update us with regard to the retaining wall and the building inspector's position and what we
Yeah, but we
asked?
might want to have, because, I know the commission is very familiar with the site plan application and the project.
Yeah, so go
There's
with that.
also an architectural supplement that's been submitted, so we haven't, even though we're all very familiar with the plan, we haven't had a formal presentation, so maybe Ken can walk through that plan, and the architectural proposal.
No, we approved estimate, building, earth materials, this is site plan.
My name is Kenneth Thomas, and I'm a resident of Orange, Connecticut. I own the property, as you all know, at 131 Boston Post Road. This is a two-pronged proposal. First is to improve the paved parking areas at the existing commercial property at 131 Boston Post Road. The lot area is approximately 1.46 acres and is presently developed with a commercial retail building. The paved areas will be improved with a drainage system, a retained stormwater retention system, and the proposal includes 27 parking spaces adequate for the existing 5,000 square foot building. There's also a rear loading dock area for small box trucks. There's also been a landscape plan submitted showing plantings for the site. The second proposal is to improve the facade and renovate it to a more modern looking in keeping with the current post road. The existing lower portion of the building with the brick and the glass will remain. The peak will be reduced and squared off to a rectangular shape and sided with wood trim and horizontal nickel gap siding and vertical V-gap siding. The color scheme will be a neutral tan and white as shown in the renderings.
And no structural changes to the building?
No,
So just the facade,
just the facade.
the roof remains the same,
Yep.
and there'll be one sign underneath the lights on the facade?
Yeah, there'll be one sign in the future, yeah.
And you'll have a guardrail for the rear of the property?
There's guardrails noted at the rear and the left side where the retaining wall is, and a fence along the retaining wall.
So, Ken, your application reuses the existing curb cuts on Boston Post Road.
Yep.
You're providing for a box truck turnaround type area in the back of the building so that you can take deliveries in a more...
At the loading dock in the rear.
Okay. The plan of conservation of development of the town of Orange encourages revitalizing, existing structures to modern standards to keep the post road viable. So your renovation of the old bedding barn logo looks much more, marketable in that respect.
Thank you.
You may want to consider, but it's up to you, being able to, take care of more than one tenant to, unless you have
I think it's gonna
5,000
be at
foot.
least to one tenant is the
Okay.
plan at the moment.
All right.
Will the green strip in the front be irrigated?
It can be.
Okay. Paul, is
It's
that it?
existing green strip.
It's an existing property, you can make a determination
Okay.
of how you feel on that.
Is the planting island along the post road, are you trying to depict that there's going to be like a monument sign there or some sort of?
The existing sign base will be remaining, the top sign will be renovated to more in keeping with.
Is there a sign
Is there a picture?
I mean, I'm forgetting on the building.
There'll be a new sign on the building, there'll be a sign proposal, and that'll be a separate
Yeah.
permit. There's a stanchion sign in front of the
There is?
building right now. It's an old bedding barn shaped
Right.
sign
Is that that?
to the left of
It's
the picture.
existing.
Yeah, it is, okay, I don't remember.
All right, so is that signage also part of the site plan application, sir?
No,
Okay, that'll come as a separate.
that'll come from the tenant.
Okay.
It's gonna be the existing stanchions in the sign, and it'll just be renovating the, Logo.
For the benefit of the audience, I believe the existing property does not have any stormwater control on it. It used to just sheet
it's
flow
a
off the
sheet
back.
flow off the rear, yes.
So would we be correctly interpreting your drawing to say that the new paved area is going to be accumulated in catch basins
Zero
and
runoff
taking?
that goes into the retained water system drainage.
Okay, and that's gonna, that is meant to recharge the groundwater? It doesn't
Yes.
daylight out into the,
It will overflow into the, there's an existing easement at the rear of the property that has an existing manhole and drains to the rear of the property.
They did get he did get wetlands approval for that.
That was all reviewed and approved.
so this site plan shows, and we observed in our walkthrough, a long retaining wall along the common property boundary with the
Pep Boys?
Pep Boys.
Yes.
When a structure like that is built on or near a property boundary, Paul, is it a general condition that we have somebody survey to make sure that that the as-built is not trespassing on the neighbors?
We get an as-built drawing.
Okay,
We will have an as-built drawing, but I can't say it's a survey.
okay.
It has to
well,
be sealed by an engineer.
But it would.
There would be an as-built at the end of the project, correct?
Yeah, well, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, I
So-
mean, there'd be an as-built that would include the built stormwater retainage system
This way.
and all the site improvements.
Okay, and so that will tell us that the retaining wall is on your property?
Yes.
Has a survey been done on this to determine whether or not that's on the property?
There's a survey that it came with a proposal that shows where
Right,
the
that's what I
existing
thought.
site improvements
Okay.
are.
So as part of a previous application, we had approved the filling of this site and the construction of that retaining wall, correct?
That's correct.
Right. So is part of today's, would part of today's approval have any, would it be appropriate to have conditions attached that the project was built in a conformance with this and that any non-conforming work that was undertaken as a part of that first permit be corrected?
Yes, we can put that in, yes.
Okay.
Have we found out from I know, we talked to Lucian at the, on-site, okay, and there was something in here that,
And-
go ahead, I'm sorry.
And maybe I could just bring
Please.
you up to speed with that, because I was hoping for a resolution before tonight, but that just wasn't possible. But Lucian was in possession of the revised drawings. Those were referred over to the town engineer. They do have some comments on it, and I think they wanted to talk to Ken to work out some, an inspection sequence on that wall. The question that I posed to the building inspector was, is this something he wanted to wait on in terms of this application? And he told me he did not have an issue or a problem if it was granted conditionally, because he still felt that he had adequate control over the retaining wall.
And an additional bond was posted,
That's correct.
and we feel that's adequate?
It should be somewhat adequate, yes. It's in the ballpark.
Only word I heard you say was someone, I'm sorry.
We didn't sit down really and
and say you completed this amount and that amount, but it
Gets us
it looks like a
closer.
it looks like a close estimate.
Bond's a excess of the estimate.
Yeah, what's most helpful all the time is the cash bond, and we're holding a $5,000 cash bond too.
There was a comment in the minutes that we haven't gone over yet that indicated that there was a movement in the wall. And,
I think that's what the building inspector was maintaining.
okay.
There was the section, if we consider the post road to be going north-south, in the southwest corner, the last 40-ish feet had a cant out of Plum towards Pep Boys. So either it was constructed that way, or as it was being backfilled, it got a little utzed over.
Is that something that can be corrected and needs to be fixed as part of the?
That's a determination
By
up
the-
to the building inspector.
Okay.
It should be all in the revised drawings I sent to the building inspector, and a portion of that is gonna be removed with the new slope in the rear of the property.
So, this whole rounded area will be paved,
Yes.
but no parking is needed.
No,
Right.
there's 27 spaces, which
All
is adequate
striped.
for the 5,000
So what is the
stripe.
purpose of paving
Just to turn
all
the
that?
truck around.
Oh, it's a lot of space.
Yeah, that's the minimum radius for a box truck.
Be nice to keep it green.
When we
So
were
it'd be
on
nice.
site, we had discussed the slope and the drop-off in the back.
That's going to be a 2-to-1 slope.
Okay, when does that happen?
Well, it has to happen before a CO is issued for the building. and
Okay.
I'm assuming it's logical to do that in the course of the next phase.
Okay, is that your understanding as
Yes.
well? Okay.
Did the building inspector give any time interval with regard to his inspection, the sequencing of inspections?
I know he had some notes, and he was working that out with the town engineer, but they had not yet talked to Ken. So I think they're looking for his cooperation on that. So
So
I can't.
we don't have access to their notes for tonight?
No,
Okay.
no.
But we
at
can
the same,
reference them in any conditional approval.
yes.
Well-
I think we just have to say, the retaining wall requires a building permit. So,
And a sign off from the
building
the
inspector.
design engineer and the,
Well, that's what Lucian was. Lucian was very strong on a couple of things. One of the things was that he would feel comfortable if another engineer signed off on it.
It looks like that's kind of accomplished. I think there's a few questions that are remaining.
Okay.
And again, they want to approach Ken to,
Okay. But that's within the purview of the building inspector as well.
yes.
Paul, was I'm sorry, I don't recall seeing a lighting submission.
There was no lighting proposed.
There's no additional lighting. It's all existing lighting on the structure.
Okay, so it's existing on the structure.
Yes.
There is, so it's still, we need to,
It should be noted on the site plan where the existing lights are.
okay, because, I mean, it's surrounded by commercial properties, but you have a concern in the regs about having .5 foot candles
At the
on,
property line.
at the property line.
Do they have to file a lighting
Um,
supplement when they're?
There's no change in the lighting. If they changed the lighting, they would have to.
Okay.
So you're gonna just stay with the lighting that is existing on the
Currently
current
on the building, there should be no pole
additional-
lights
no
or
pole
anything
lighting.
like that.
Okay. Safety. What's over here? I know it's in the commercial zone, but do you have an idea of the hours of operation? Just,
probably between 7 or 8 and 8 o'clock at night. It's gonna be retail use.
Retail, yep.
And the site plan shows the handicap parking,
I believe it did.
and there's a handicap
was the question?
accessible.
It goes in, Ash.
There's 2 handicap spaces as noted in the front of the building.
Yep.
Can you slide me that quickly, Paul? Sorry.
Saw that. What else? Are there any other questions for Mr. Thomas?
Not for me, no.
Thank you.
All set?
Set.
Thank you.
This is the one where the public hearing has been, we're just under the
public
wire?
No, this isn't a public
Probably,
hearing.
sorry.
The site
But
plan was
the
coming.
time limitation for this
That's what it was.
application
Was
is,
coming.
is tonight.
So if we feel we can put enough assurances in with regard to the building inspector and town engineer with a conditional approval, we could move forward and act this evening, and if we don't feel comfortable with that, we would have to ask the applicant for an extension. And
Well, it seemed, in discussing it with Paul and meeting out there, that people felt, our engineers felt that our obligation would be satisfied to know that a professional licensed engineer signed off on the as-built condition of the wall so that it was not going to be a hazard to the adjoining property.
That's the position that Lucian made clear to us that day.
So, if that is a condition to getting a CO, because, you know, you certainly don't want the retaining wall to trespass on the neighbor's property.
He said that there was a survey, I assume there was, a survey that when
Yeah.
before they did the wall, that there were,
That's code for the wall falling down.
gotcha.
Okay.
Gotta love lawyers.
Yeah. You know, I mean, if we look at it just as a site plan application, this is what we want these properties to be doing on the post
I
road.
got no problem except for this thing.
Right. So, we're upgrading the storm drainage, and wetlands approved it.
Right.
We're updating a building to put it back on the on the tax rolls.
Right, looking much
And
better and refreshing.
Looking
and-
much better and
Yep.
fresh. And so if we condition it on the appropriate, you know.
Protections from the building inspector signing off on it with the professional engineers.
Well, the professional engineer, you know, certifying to the town engineer that it's constructed in accordance with the approved design.
Right.
You know, he's got somebody's seal on it, then, you know, I would vote to, I mean, I would vote to, tonight.
Yeah, I agree.
And approve it.
I got no problem with everything that you said, as long as we have controls to make sure that the final construct was in accordance with the plans and signed off on by our building official. Paul, you got any difference in terms of protections that you think that we're not doing?
No, we're holding the bond, and building inspector didn't have a problem with the conditional approval tonight. All the other department heads have signed off.
So the retaining wall will require a building permit. is
Well,
part of
there is an application for a building permit. I just think the resolution of the existing wall and future inspections, and maybe a few other concerns that the engineer and building inspector had. But-
So we can reference their notes, their comments, even though.
Yeah, or there'll be some verbiage in there that to the side, that the wall has to be constructed in accordance with an approved building permit and inspections by the, and
Certified
inspections
by a-
and certified by an engineer.
By their engineer.
Sounds like we're building a motion.
I think so, too.
I think since the applicant is planning on doing an as-built anyway, that asking that they specifically check the property line condition adjoining Pep Boys to make sure there's no encroachment would not be, a lot to ask.
You need some help, but I'm ready to take a whack at it. I'll make a motion that we, is that okay, everyone? All right, okay. I'll make a motion that we approve the site plan application for the property known as 131 Boston Post Road, submitted by 131 Boston Post Road LLC, to repave certain parking areas after filling, grading. It will also include drainage improvements. A site plan application supplement was also, architectural standards was submitted, with the following conditions. Number one, that the comments of the building official be confirmed that the wall was constructed in accordance with the plans that were submitted. Additionally, that the plans include a professional licensed inspector certifying now this is what I need, the structural integrity or had,
That the wall was constructed in accordance with the stamped sealed drawings.
okay. Number three, that the applicant provide a as-built that will confirm that the retaining wall is fully on the applicant's property and does not encroach onto the neighbors.
We'll put that as a condition, but that is also a requirement for a CO.
Yeah, makes sense. And that a building permit eventually be issued for that retaining wall.
Feel we've covered everything? Okay. So we have a motion on the floor. Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 3-1. Good luck.
Build a good wall.
Build a good wall.
Rent to a good tenant.
Right.
It's actually already rented out.
Yeah, I have a feeling.
It's gonna be a Rings End.
Oh, the building company.
Yeah, more paint store, paint and decorating. So, that's what we're trying to get done. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a great night.
Bye-bye.
All right, thank you, Judy. That concludes our agenda at this point, so.
Move that we adjourn.
Thank you, Commissioner Kaplan.
Is that where
We
you're
have a-
going?
Do we have a second to that motion?
Second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, thank you.
And welcome again.
Same here, Paul.